This episode is brought to you by Summer School Electronics. With pedals like the Snow Day Delay, the Pep Rally Fuzz, the Trash Panda, and my personal favorite, the Science Fair, which is two classic dirt pedals in one, with a mid-boosted overdrive on one side, a black lab rat circuit on the other, and a blend knob to blend between them to find the perfect classic stacked dirt sound you're looking for, it's hard not to find something you'll love. Mark builds all of his pedals by hand in Syracuse, New York, where he also works as a full-time educator. In addition to the super fun graphics on their pedals, Mark also offers custom artwork. Want your dog's face on a pedal? He can do it. Want your face on a pedal? He can make that happen too. Go over to summerschoolelectronics.com and make sure to tell him that 40 Watt Podcast sent you. All right, y'all. It's that time again. 40 Watt Podcast coming at you. This is Phillip. Today, I'm super excited to have a friend of mine on the podcast. This is going to be, she doesn't know this yet, although she's probably figured it out by now. Alice Hasen is a violinist out of Memphis, Tennessee, originally from Vermont, who is the first non-guitarist I've had on this podcast. Further proof. Yeah, see, I told folks this podcast was about music and not just guitar, but nobody believed me. So now I'm having to prove everybody I'm being real about this. I got piano players planned. I've got all sorts of folks planned. Actually, I ran out of other instruments at that point, but I'm planning on other things. We're going to talk to a whole bunch of people. But today, I have Alice Hasen out of now Memphis, Tennessee, Soul City, USA. I don't care what anybody says. Detroit can claim what they want. They can say all they want. Memphis is still doing it. But so I'm going to set you up here, Alice. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, talk all about yourself, but I'm just going to set you up just a little bit here. So Alice started studying violin at the age of 4. Comes from a mother who played in the Vermont Symphony Orchestra. You grew up in like that classical world from a very, very early age. And now you play, I don't even know what to call the music you play. So talk about your journey to Memphis, Tennessee, how you got there, how'd you get into music, which I've given a little bit of that away, but I'm sure there's a whole lot more going on there. Tell us how you got here.
Hey, well, that's like a whole life story, Phillip. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
It started at age 4. No, I'm just kidding. It might have started around that time. My mom always waffles when I ask her. She's like, sometime around then. I was like, what? You didn't, put it in your diary when I started? I guess she didn't think, it would matter too much. But she is definitely, one of the primary people that I always give credit to for both getting me into music and keeping me an active and motivated musician. And like you said, very accurately, Phillip, she is the one of the flutists in the Vermont Symphony, and Jansen is her name. And she would bring me to all of her symphony concerts and rehearsals when I was little. And I remember she asked me one day, she sat me down real seriously, and she said, okay, Alice, the time has come for you to learn an instrument, and what do you want to play? And I thought for a moment, my 4-year-old self, or 5, or I don't know. And I thought about the instruments that I knew the most. And from a little kid's perspective in the audience, the two sections that you can see most easily in the orchestra are the violin and the cello. And so that's how I chose the violin, was because I could see it from the audience.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, that's the most illustrious story that I'm sure you've ever heard. An origin story for how somebody came to find their voice.
It's as good a reason as any, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think you reason too much when you're that age.
Very true.
I'm pretty sure that I got caramel candies after I practiced. That was one big motivator. And yeah, I think I might have actually been more consistent and like put in more practice hours then than I do now. I mumbled that part, but I said that I do right now. Because,
oh yeah, no, I think that's all of us.
Sure, you know. Yeah, you all have to. Every musician has to be like an everything to themselves. They have to be. Well, right now I'm my own accountant because I'm going through my 2020 tax information. You know, we all have to do that.
No, for all those gigs.
You know,
for all those gigs that 2020 brought us.
Be, right. It's actually a very easy year to go through my taxes, figure out what I made, and it's kind of sad. But anyway, the first like 2.5 months were pretty good last year, and after that, actually had a really fun December. I played at the Memphis Zoo outdoors because right now I'm only doing outdoor gigs, and people were tipping me. It was awesome. It was really cold though, and I think that they found like the one the one person who might be able to withstand the cold more than most Memphians can.
Makes total sense.
Oh yeah, I'm from Vermont. I don't know if you said that already.
I did, but it's worth noting. A beautiful state. I visited for the first time in 2019. So
nice. I think you told me about that trip, as I recall.
Yeah, Burlington. What an incredible little town. I would have never thought it.
Yeah. Wait a minute. You're saying a lot of things. I don't care what anybody says.
No, it was a neat little town. Had a great little speakeasy hidden bar that I loved called Lincoln's. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it on a podcast. It's not so secret then. But no, it was really cool. God, this is so sidetracked, but I don't care. So this bar is down an alley through 2 completely blacked out glass double doors, and you walk through those doors, and it's a coat rack. Like, the room is like the size of someone's bathroom. There's some coat racks on the wall and an ATM machine. You have to pull on one of the coat racks to open the door to go upstairs to the bar.
Oh, man.
It's so cool. And
see, I think you might...
and everything's $5.
So cool. I didn't never know about that.
Yeah, we had to do some deep digging.
Wow.
You know, I was at a library conference, so librarians have to find where all the good bars are. That's our parlor trick.
That's what a librarian has in their job description. Yeah. Well, seeing as I've been likened to a librarian once or twice, maybe I actually did miss my calling.
It is never too late. But no, it seems like you're doing pretty well already. So, as you were saying, musician has to be everything nowadays. You're your own accountant. You're your own booking agent. You're your own publicist. You're your own, in a lot of cases, record label, everything.
Mm-hmm. You are. Yeah. I've definitely I've gotten a bigger taste of that. Of course, the Blackwater Trio was sort of my entrance into non-classical life. But as far as like really accounting for everything and leadership and stuff goes, I've really gotten a taste of that in the last 2.5 years or so with my own solo project and stuff. Because it's just so much harder to, I don't know, it's on a different level when you're the one trying to like rally everybody to go to the studio on a certain day, or, you know, just all logistics. And it's all riding on your name, not just a group name. So yeah, there's been a lot of learning that I feel like I've done in the past couple of years. And I don't know, it gives me hope because, you know, every year I get a little better. I now have a spreadsheet for my taxes as opposed to just like, you know, piles of paper.
Yeah.
I downloaded my years ago, and that was like, no joke, a life-changing moment for me. And I'm not getting paid to say that, but just get yourself something, musicians out there, something to track your miles.
Yes.
Biggest piece of advice I can give.
Mileage is huge, and a lot of musicians don't pay attention to it. You know, I didn't do a lot of them because I hate them. I hate casino gigs. I hate them so much.
Yeah, I've played 1 or 2 of those in a time.
Music to be ignored by, but So played these casino gigs, and of course, 1099s, as any, all you musicians should be filing your taxes on all of your gigs. You should never not file your taxes. You hear that, IRS, and whatever NSA agent is assigned to me? I'm just letting you know. But, yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
And, no, yeah, 20% of your tips? No, whatever. So
all the musicians are going to hate me now.
I know.
I do not comment on the tip part. I'm just official.
But so played those gigs, and it was the first time I ever had someone explain to me about mileage, writing it off. And it's like your mileage is part of your expense. And by the time I got done with the mileage for rehearsals and the gigs and et cetera, it was a wash. Like, taxes were a complete wash. I owed nothing because I actually basically took a loss by the time you calculated mileage. Yeah, it's good and bad news. It's like I basically took a loss by the time you calculated mileage.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot in the past 2 years. Every time I go in to do taxes, and I just go to H&R Block, because obviously it's enough to keep track of without actually knowing how to do taxes. But I just learn something new every year. And, how you can, if you have a music space in your home, you can put that percentage of your home into the cost, and utilities, and if you have a phone or whatever. But anyway, this is all making for probably very boring podcast talk if I talk about all those tax tricks I've learned.
It is. It's boring, but it's important. For example, this podcast, I just filed LLC for this podcast. Like, it's a registered business, right? And that means that
for you.
Yeah, it's a thing that needed to happen. Like, for tax purposes, if I want to be serious about it, and I do, that means that my gear gets to be written off. Like, whatever I buy, like the space I use in my house to record this podcast, that's a business expense. So it's a very, very small one, which means my taxes are going to be super complicated next year when I have to file them. But it's needed in order to keep that all straight and to make sure that I'm not getting raked over the coals later. And musicians need to understand a little bit. They don't have to be accountants, but they do need to understand a little bit. And I think nobody talks about that.
We'll be right back.
This podcast is supported in part by Stringjoy Strings. I'm a snob, at least that's what people tell me. I'm never okay with good enough, and that's where Stringjoy Strings come in. They're better than good enough. They're the best. Stringjoy are making some of the finest strings available today right up the road from me in Nashville, Tennessee. They offer custom sets, balanced tension, coated strings, the works. If you need it, they can probably make it happen. You should be using Stringjoy Strings, and if you're going to order from them, you really could help this podcast out by clicking the affiliate link down in the description or show notes below. You get amazing strings, I get a little bit of that back to help the show keep going. It's a win-win situation. Get your Stringjoy Strings today.
I think it's totally right. And one last thing okay, so I haven't actually filed my LLC yet, but I do sort of have plans to. But I've even had people tell me that it can protect you from, say if somebody trips on a cable at your show and they want to sue you for their broken leg or something, then the business is kind of between you and them.
Yep.
And so they sue your business, and maybe your business has $2,000 in the bank or something. But I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting. I think that you're right. It's important, and I actually feel like I'm better at understanding things like that than I am at songwriting. But it's just because it's more straightforward, and that's how my brain works. But yeah, it's something that I do kind of find interesting, and I think that it's worthwhile to get those things right. And copywriting songs, or putting your music into a catalog at BMI or ASCAP or something. It's all kind of tedious, but I think it's important for anybody who wants to really, go into it and make a business plan with it.
Agreed.
Anyway.
Yeah, all that tedious stuff that nobody wants to talk about but has to get done, and you'd love to be able to hire someone to do it for you, but nobody's making enough money out here in the nitty gritty to hire someone to do it for them. That's just what it amounts to.
Maybe you could do a podcast on tips and tricks of the financial life of a musician.
I
don't know nothing.
There's a really great podcast that I'm going to talk about them, that I recommend every musician listen to, even if you don't use CD Baby. CD Baby puts out a podcast every 2 weeks, I think. Sometimes it's a little longer. Sometimes there's a couple of episodes in that time frame. Whatever. It's pretty regular. Called the DIY Musician Podcast. They talk about everything.
Oh, I've actually heard of that.
Yeah, it's so cool. Right. They talk about the finances. They talk about advertising. They talk about merchandising. They talk about recording and royalties and everything like that. And I think every musician who is doing original music should be listening to that podcast.
Nice. I'm going to write that down right now.
Yeah, it's a great one. There's a huge backlog. In fact, they put one out today as we're recording. I don't want to exactly date what day we're recording, but they put one out today. I haven't listened to it yet, but I've been listening to them pretty religiously for the last couple of years, and I don't even have original music out yet. So it's like I've just been stocking all this knowledge.
We ought to team up. I've got some songs that need protecting, and you have all the knowledge.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
So,
nice.
So let's fast forward just a little bit. You're in this classical world. You go to college in Connecticut. You get out of college and you move to Mississippi. Talk through that.
Full stop.
Yeah, full stop.
That was, oh man, that was an experience. And let me just preface this by saying that I have some of my best friends are from Mississippi now in my life, and some of my first real Alice experiences that I still are, formative for me happened in Mississippi. But it was a culture shock. It was the way that I entered Mississippi. I just remember this really clearly. I went through Memphis, and I went down 61 because that was just the GPS direction. Uh-huh. And you know how 61 can get a little just gnarly before you hit Mississippi when you're leaving Memphis.
Yeah, it does.
It's all of the,
it's a little gritty there.
Yeah, it's just, it's just a part of 61. And then you go up a hill and downhill, and then it's just flat green expanse. And I was just I think I turned off whatever I was listening to on the radio. I was just I am in Mississippi now for the first time in my life. And then I proceeded to drive through the Delta, which was a place just geologically so different from any place I've ever been, having grown up, in a mountainous state.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful and haunting. And then when I kind of first I went down to Delta State University where they gave us our training through Teach for America, because I was there for Teach for America to be a band director. That's what brought me down initially, as I know that you know. But
yeah,
I just remember really, really hot summers, mosquitoes that just seemed too large to exist in real life, and talking on the phone with a boyfriend who really didn't like the fact that I was so far away, and eventually would lead us, to a breakup. But it was the best thing for both of us in the end. But it was really both an exciting time and a lonely time. And teaching was the first year was just a wash, and then the second and third years as a band director in a public high school in Mississippi were way better because I had my feet under me finally. But I was, just in every way kind of lost. And I put away my violin for a good semester, just trying to keep my head above water teaching. And I felt like I had lost a limb or something. I know that's kind of cliche, but I was, pretty much just a classical musician at that point after graduating Yale. And I felt like I had a big, huge part of my expression cut out. but I just didn't have time to practice or energy after I came home from the workday. And then I started to like attend these open mic nights in the second semester of teaching, and that's when I kind of got more like interested in, you know, just being more of a local in Clarksdale because I could have the time and the energy. And then Seth and Walt came over to our house and started to jam, and that was sort of the beginning of our group, the Blackwater Trio. And that was, I think, the thing that kept me. When it came time to like tell the boyfriend that I wasn't gonna just go back to move to live with him in DC, like music was a really big thing that kept me in Clarksdale, and of course a lot of the people there too, just, you know, making me feel like I had a responsibility to stay, and also I wanted to stay because I was making really good friends and kind of like exploring this new side of myself musically that I had never known was there or could be there. And that was pretty much the reason I stayed. So I tell people that I came down for teaching and stayed for music. And I stayed in Clarksville for 4 years, taught for 3 of them. And the fourth one was sort of like my big leap out of, you know, the grit and grind of being a teacher who gets up at 6 a.m. every day. In fact, I think Walt gave me a retirement card, like, happy retirement, Alice.
That's awesome.
When I got out of teaching in 2015.
That's so cool.
Yeah, very thoughtful.
Yeah, and it's...
And I just, yeah, it was very good change for me, lifestyle-wise.
It's an interesting story that, you know, I lived in Clarksdale for most of my life, not all of it at this point. There was a day not that long ago where I could say that, but of people coming to Clarksdale for whatever reason. For you, it was teaching and band directing and Teach for America. And for those of you who don't know what Teach for America is, it's a program that brings recent college grads into high risk and impoverished areas to teach basically at-risk youth. And whether it's Teach for America that comes in or it brings you in, or if it's a music pilgrimage, I've met so many great friends at this point, guys and gals who move from, say, Washington, D.C. because of the blues. They want to live there and experience it. Or EY, who comes from Japan every year, just not this year, obviously, but comes every year just to experience the Delta for a few months before he goes back home to Japan. Or the Australians that come to Clarksdale, buy property, open restaurants, open bed and breakfast, you know, open all sorts of cool things because they want to be a part of this weird and wonderful, wacky blues and Delta culture. And that's why I think it's such a travesty that to a lot of people, especially Mississippians, they see Clarksdale as the Delta and run down and impoverished. But whereas you leave the state and suddenly people see it as this magical, wonderful, artsy, musical place that they have to go explore and they have to be a part of somehow. And it gets me riled up. It's like you got to look beyond the face of something and see the soul of it. And the soul of Clarksdale pulls people in, and people stay. Like, a lot of times they don't come intending to stay. I doubt you came to Mississippi with the intention of staying in the Delta, which you're in Memphis. You're still in the Delta. We'll still take it. You're technically on the bluff, but whatever.
That's the capital of Mississippi, as they say.
It is at least the capital of the Delta. I'll give it that. I do get salty with Memphis sometimes when they start trying to claim things that aren't theirs. It happens, and I get salty about it. B.B. King's from the Delta. He ain't from Memphis. But anyway, neither here nor there.
It's okay. I'm not a Memphian, like, by native blood, so I don't I won't fight you on that.
Oh, it's seeping in, though. You're not going to be there much longer before you'll be a legit Memphian. I promise. It happens. I've got a fraternity brother of mine that I know from Delta State. That dude grew up his entire life in DeSoto County, Mississippi, and if you ask him where he's from, Memphis.
I will say, like, Memphis I wasn't expecting this. I just thought, okay, I'll move to a city. It's going to be like finding myself all over again because I've been in a small town for 4 years and like I've been kind of used to, walking to the coffee shop and stuff. But like, Memphis has just like given me a big hug with both arms. And I feel like it's like the kind of city where you put love into a place and it comes right back to you.
Yeah.
And I just don't think every city's like that. I haven't, of course, lived in that many other cities for an extended period of time, but I do feel just like, they call it a big small town, and I feel the vibe there. It definitely has a similar soul to Clarksdale, just a little bit bigger of a place.
It's another place that has that vibe. It definitely has that vibe, and it's another city. It gets a bad rap. It gets a worse rap than it should. It really does. Because again, people don't see beyond the face, and people don't get off Beale Street. Get off Beale Street, people. Go somewhere else.
I was talking to somebody who plays on Beale Street like 2 days ago, because at my part-time job at Amarillo Music, it's a music store, a lot of folks come in, and I was talking with this guy about how there's like two worlds in Memphis. There's of musicians, and one is Beale Street, and the other is the rest of Memphis. And you can live here for years and just like never get to know anybody who plays on Beale Street, and they'll never get to know you because the communities, like, you could just play on Beale Street. And I have lots of friends who just play Beale Street every night or several nights, and I mean, it pays for sure. Probably better than the non-Beale Street side of things.
Having played both Beale Street and off Beale Street, Beale Street definitely pays better. But it's overrated. Beale Street is just bourbon. If you go to New Orleans and you spend your entire time on bourbon, you have not seen New Orleans. You don't know a thing about that city.
I agree.
Memphis is the same way. If you go to Memphis and you spend your whole time...
I agree.
New Orleans is my favorite city. No offense, Memphis. You're in the top 5. But it's if you go to Memphis and spend your whole time on Beale, you're wasting your time. You could get that experience in any college town in America going to the college student bar scene. It's not that different. It's really not. But Nashville's actually the same way. I'll be honest. I lived in Murfreesboro, Tennessee for a couple of years, so I spent a lot of time going into Nashville. There's the Nashville that's touristy. There's the country Nashville. And when I mean, you know what I mean when I say country, I mean the rhinestone and the glitter and the whole 9 yards. There's the 2nd Avenue and Broadway. But then there's Nashville, the real music city. Not country Nashville, not commercial Nashville, but there's this incredible music scene in Nashville that has nothing to do with Music Row. And people don't get to see that if they just come into town for the country bands on Broadway, which you're going to see some great musicians. You're going to hear some great singers, but you're not finding the soul.
I agree, totally. I actually go to, you probably have done a couple of these, the Folk Alliance conferences, Folk Alliance International. And like, you never meet any of the Broadway musicians there. You always meet the people from, like, the real Nashville, as I would also call it. I think that's accurate. It's just, I mean, even the bluegrass scene, like, you're not really going to find that on Broadway either.
No.
It's just straight up top 40 country,
Yeah, and it's really frustrating.
Because I've never gone to this Broadway. I just don't have an interest in top 40 country songs. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's totally okay. There's nothing wrong if my listeners like country music. That's totally fine. It's not my bag. It's not my thing. I just bought.
Oh, but you know what I do like?
What's that?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
There's a song that's close to my heart, and it's Katie Steinauer is listening. This one goes out to her, and it goes, rain makes corn, corn makes whiskey, whiskey makes my baby, get a little frisky.
Oh my gosh, that song.
That's the one line that you enjoy.
That song's so bad.
It's so good, it's so bad, though. I
actually take some pride that I've never heard some of the the, like those moment in time country songs, like Toby Keith's Red Solo Cup. I've never heard that song. And I take pride in having never heard that song. There's just moments that I'm like,
you know what?
What?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I know that's probably bad. I should probably listen just for the sake of understanding what everybody's talking about, but I don't care.
I was going to say, when you said Red Solo Cup, back when I was a band director, my students, of course, they were so in touch with everything, of the moment musically. Obviously, they were listening to all the just the artists that I had no idea. But I distinctly remember having a conversation with a kid, and they wanted to play in the marching band. They wanted to play "Drank in My Cup," and I arranged it for them, just crossing my fingers that it wouldn't make the superintendent upset when she heard it, because she went to all the games, because there aren't any lyrics when the marching band plays.
That's awesome.
So "Drank in My Cup," technically is okay, I suppose.
Yeah, there's no lyrics unless everybody starts singing along. Then there's a problem.
Yeah, well, I can't control that. As, outside of the bandstand, whatever happens outside the bandstand is not my responsibility. But yeah,
goodness.
Speaking of those songs, but hey, it was fun. They sounded good on "Drank in My Cup." So.
And you know what?
Kids.
If it made the kids happy,
high school.
And without getting really far in the weeds, because we have a couple of things we definitely need to talk about. But because before this podcast, we went off on a music theory tangent, and it's rare that I get to really get nerdy about music theory. But I'm one of those people who genuinely believes we need to stop teaching traditional marching music to marching bands, and we need to start teaching music that kids can relate to make them actually enjoy playing music.
Oh, yeah, I feel like that's very true. Yeah, as a former music educator, and I still kind of like to work with kids when they come into AMRO, and just try to say at least one or two things that will maybe get them excited to go home and practice on their instrument or whatever. But people who maybe I roll my eyes a little bit, like Lindsey Sterling comes out with another 4-chord song, but but at the same time, there's a whole generation of young violinists who are taking violin lessons because of her. So I think that it's really important to, and also those are the listeners of the next generation. So just as a musician, yeah, I want them to get excited about the violin. And if that's Lindsey Sterling or Taylor Davis or, I don't know, some other great fiddlers, Regina Carter, I think, is another one that I've gotten into. I can't remember if that's the right combination of names. But anyway, there's others who are, a little bit more musicians, violinists. But anybody who can get people interested in what I do, or just listening to music in general, I think that that's really key. So yeah, I try to remember that education is actually a way to sustain any music career, because those are going to be your fans in the near future, or even at the moment.
That's very, very true. And I am woefully unversed in violinists and fiddlers out there. I've seen a few over the years who are I don't even know, because it's such a different world for me. But of course, people like Sarah Watkins I'm really into, because I was really into Nickel Creek when they first came out. And since then, she does a family band with her brother now. She also does a band called...
I'm with her.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, thank you. I almost said She and Him, which is Zoe Deschanel's band. But
Zoe,
yeah, a totally different band. But yeah, I'm with her. What a great... Oh, they're killing it. They sound so good. But it's...
I know.
And
I am a fan as well.
You've got to encourage these musicians. It's, first of all, on the record, this is on the record on a Guitar Gear podcast. Yes, that's technically what we are, Music Gear podcast. I like Taylor Swift. I like Taylor Swift a lot. And you know what? If you don't, that's fine. But Taylor Swift is inspiring an entire generation of young women to take up guitar and write songs and be musicians. And that's awesome.
It's true. Also, I enjoyed her most recent project that she put out there. It was a different direction for Taylor Swift. But I also agree. And what else I like about her is she stand up for, I think she stood up to Apple about not putting out music and not reimbursing the artists.
You know, she stood up to Spotify too. You know, for a long time she wasn't on Spotify.
Right.
In fact, when 1989 came out, she was the only album that went platinum the year 1989 came out because she did not put it on Spotify.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And so now now that Apple is reworking on it, I don't know where they are in any stages. 2020 changed everything, but pre-2020, she was working with Apple to change their artist streaming rights. She was working with Spotify to talk to them about representing artists more. In fact, when she signed her new record deal, and this is where I really wish that I had the article in front of me, but you never know what we're going to talk about on here, so I can't have it in front of me. She signed her new record deal, and I remember it because it was right around Thanksgiving. I think it's the deal she has now. And when it's a sub-label of some major, I think it's Universal. Somebody will tell me I'm wrong, but it's okay. Whatever major label she's on, she negotiated for better streaming rights in her contract. But she was able to leverage her celebrity. And not only did she get better streaming rights for her, she, in her contract, got better streaming rights for every artist on that label.
Wow.
Yeah, she's
that's so good.
She's the kind of people we need in music right now that have the celebrity, could just ride it, could just do what they want to do, but instead she's still fighting for every musician out there to make the money they should be from streaming.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
and also I will say, I was having a conversation with another person today, actually, a Memphis drummer. And I was like, I proudly raised my hand as one of those folks who is both a consumer and creator on Spotify.
Yeah.
And both ways I'm paying. And I almost, I have some friends who don't put music on Spotify because of the fact that they know that they're not going to, you're kind of pulling the rug out from underneath yourself by doing it.
Agreed.
But at the same time, they're bound because if somebody, I'm still at the stage, obviously, where people are, they don't know who I am. So it's better for me to get the exposure and to have the ability for them to type in my name on Spotify. But I totally admire people who, like Taylor Swift, already have everything in place and they can just speak up for the little guy like me and actually negotiate some things. So yeah, kudos to Taylor Swift indeed.
I really like
model.
another.
She's a goddess.
Oh, she and I like another thing she did when she put out Folklore. See, she's teaching artists how to do it while she doesn't have to do it. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. She doesn't have to be doing the thing she's doing. She could never sell another record, and she'd never have to worry about money, right? But she, when she put out Folklore, I can't remember if it was 8 different album covers. If you bought the physical copy, they did 8 limited edition artworks for the album. Or maybe 8, maybe 12, I can't remember. But they did limited edition artwork. So suddenly you're appealing to that hardcore fan base. They're going to buy every one of those. Because they want all the artwork. They want all the individual artworks for them. Exactly. It's brilliant. There is zero reason that small artists can't do a similar thing. You know what? You've got a tour coming up. You got a 5-week tour, 3-week tour, whatever it is. Order one batch of your CDs that have a special artwork on them for that tour. bam.
That's cool.
Suddenly it becomes
I
a
like
collector's piece. It's more of a souvenir of that tour to own, even though they could get your music on Spotify. And she also included a couple of tracks on the CD that you can't get on Spotify.
I like that idea. I do like the bonus tracks.
Yeah, I think
especially when they're hidden and they're a surprise.
Yeah, and you've just got to give people incentive to buy the physical media, and I think she's doing a good job of it. So
right.
I will stick.
Well, for somebody who's
oh no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, for someone who, like, you say you don't have any original music out or anything, like, you have everything else in place. So if you need to go just make a CD in order to implement all of this business knowledge you have.
Yeah, I my problem is songwriting is the most difficult thing for me. I'm getting there. I'm getting better. Actually, I talked about it on a recent podcast with my buddy Spencer. Actually, podcast that just came out. When this one comes out, it'll be the one before, I think. I am my own worst critic, and I've spent the last 15 years trying to get past that. But also, I've been trying to really find what it is I want to say, and I've been having trouble with that. And I'm finally getting to a point where I'm just, you know what, Phillip, just get the songs out. The right ones will find you. Don't spend so much time trying to find the right songs. They'll find you. Just write. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Hopefully we'll see
album. I have
album.
the same problem.
It's tough. It's so hard. It is. Songwriting is the most excruciating, like, self-loathing experience that I've ever had. Nothing makes me hate myself more than songwriting.
It's yeah. And, like, I do think that there's a little bit of, well, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot of self-loathing in every musician. But, like, it's funny because I don't want to always say that I am, because you also have to believe that you're not horrible if you ever want to get anything done. But like, it really, anything that brings me into a place where I have to focus on, that I have to face my shortcomings, like my perceived, whatever it is I'm self-conscious about in my heart. And that can be like going back to a classical concerto that I used to be able to play, like at concert speed, and now I'm like kind of relearning it. Or songwriting, which is definitely something that I haven't been doing for my whole life. Or even singing, because really, like, I mean, I was in choir in middle school or whatnot, but the way that my songs that I'm writing now, like, push me to try to use my voice is totally outside my comfort zone, and, like, definitely just one of those things that's hard to listen to yourself after you record, usually. So I don't know. I encountered the same resistance, and let me throw something out there for you. I don't know who wrote this book, but a friend of mine suggested a book called The War of Art. And it's about, like, resistance and, how it's a real inhibitor to creation. And, of course, like, synthesizing and creating is one of the hardest things for a person to do. It's at the top of the, like, educator list of objectives for your classroom, or, for your students. And so, yeah, I think it's really interesting that somebody wrote a book about that. So check out The War of Art.
I will definitely check that out. And I'll make sure that I'll link that book down in the description below this podcast so people can find it as well. It'll probably be an Amazon link, but feel free to buy it on whatever book vendor you want. I'm not affiliated with Amazon. It's just the easiest way to do it. I have to throw that out
lying.
there. Like, Amazon is...
like you, Taylor Swift, Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon is so divisive right now. So it's like, it's an Amazon link. You can look at it and then go buy it wherever you want. I don't care. It's like, seriously, but it's an Amazon. It'll
sort of like the love-hate relationship with Spotify.
Exactly. I mean, you nailed it though. If you're a up and coming artist, or, like, for me, I think I talked about this with Spencer. It's like, I don't want to make it, quote unquote, right? I don't like, I want to record an album of music that I'm proud to put my name on. I want to be able to go play live shows for this music, little weekender tours if that's what it comes to. I want to make enough money to like pay the band and not go broke doing it. But beyond that, I don't care. It's like I can completely break even and I'll be completely okay with it. Like, pay the band, pay our mileage. Awesome. Let's do it. Because it's not my full-time job. I do it because I love doing it.
That's the right place to be in. And even though last year I lost money because, well, in 2019, never mind. 2019 I lost money because I made violin trio, and that was more money than I brought in at the time. But like, even when you're trying to make it your full-time or part-time career, I think that you should always be in that mindset of like, if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Because if you're doing it for the money, there's no money in it. I know you're talking about that with Walt too.
Yeah, there's not money in it. You've got to diversify. And that's what every podcast talks about. The DIY Musician podcast they've been talking about. They're like, if you think you're just going to make money selling records, you're not going to make any money. That's just it. That world has passed. That ship has sailed. You've got to figure out a way to engage your fans. And there's a theory they talk about, and I need to read the book. I don't even remember what the book is, but I'll find it. Maybe I'll put a link down in the podcast again if I remember. But there's a book, I think it's like 100 True Fans or something like that. And I think the concept is if you can create 100 true fans who will spend $100 a year on you, whether that be music, videos, merchandise, tickets to your concerts, anything like that. If you can get 100 people to spend $100 on you a year, that's the way to do it. But you've got to diversify. They're not going to buy $100 worth of music from you.
Huh. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't have to have thousands and thousands of fans. You've just got to get 100 true fans.
I think education comes back into play there because, like, how do you build like a long-term relationship with someone? I mean, that's one way, but I think that people have to buy into you as a person first, and then they'll buy into your music afterwards. But I think that, like, when I think about who some of my true fans, like, if I were to, I feel like I also don't want to brag, you know.
Yeah.
But I know I do because, like, I know the couple that came down from Oregon to be in Memphis for my CD release show. Like, they are a true fan. They tune into Fiddler's Friday every week, and there's some other people like that too. And yeah, and like I almost don't want to just like think about how I'm gonna get $100 from them, but I think that the idea of spreading out what you do is important, and especially now that we're learning, live shows might not always be a given. Do some other stuff like I'm doing a lot of home recording right now for people. In fact, Sean Resky and I are in talk about an album he wants to make.
Who's
I
that?
hope he doesn't get upset with me for saying that.
I missed the name.
Quad Canoe Company.
Oh yeah, very cool.
Yeah, Sean Resky, who's the head of that establishment, Clarksdale establishment. So anyway, he sent me some of his songs, and he, of course, was like, "Oh, I'm no songwriter." He's a great songwriter. I love what he sent me.
John Rusky is one of the most.
Away.
That man is one of the most talented and intelligent people I've ever met in my entire life. He doesn't make any sense.
He's so thoughtful.
Yeah.
And his family too. I love his wife and little daughter Emma.
Yeah.
Sarah and Emma Resky.
Yeah. So Sarah was my in my first full-time library job, Sarah was my boss at the Carnegie Library there in Clarksdale. And so I still talk to her pretty regularly because we're both library directors here in Mississippi. I don't know if I've actually said that on the podcast before. That's my full-time job. I'm a public library director. She and her daughter and John, some of the coolest people. And John is super talented musician, songwriter, just intelligent and thoughtful and profound. Anyway, I'm going to go on a John Ruskey, like, a fanboy like crazy. I love that guy. So that's awesome. You're working with him on that. And it's such a cool world that we're in now that you can record at home as work. Like, people can send you tracks. You can record your parts to them, send it back to them. We don't, the concept of the studio has changed so dramatically just since I was in school for recording industry management. Like,
wow. Yeah, definitely. We actually just put some sound tiles up in our music room this past weekend. Brandon and I did. And, like, I think I might be doing this well after the pandemic is over. In fact, Walt and I have been getting into Pro Tools collaboration mode. There's a song I'm working on called Dream of Rain, and it's already written, but, like, we're working on a video compilation.
oh, cool.
And it's just, like, yeah, and so Pro Tools, I mean, he's, like, basically given me all of the information I have ever needed for Pro Tools. But, yeah, things like that. I think he said he was thinking about it and that he thought it was the future of Pro Tools, is, like, collaboration over, over the cloud and stuff. But it's good. I'm proud that I've been able to kind of add that skill set to my, toolbox in the last year or so, because I don't know, it's just another, like, form of income, like you said, diversifying. And I've been able to work with people from all around the world. Like, there was a singer-songwriter from the UK who we did a version of Bright Eyes from Watership Down, the movie Watership Down. They had a song called Bright Eyes.
Okay.
So it was a sad song that I was recording for this British singer. It was awesome.
And see, and that's sort of what I'm trying to get into, is like that mindset that can be done. Because part of what held me back from writing and recording my own music was I don't have the money to put into studio time, and I have this degree that I should be able to use and record it myself. But then it's also, I don't know. There was all those hang-ups in learning and getting better at actually doing the software and keeping up with all the changes. And 2020 has made me dial back and be like, okay, Phillip, stop trying to, eat the whole elephant in a bite. Just settle back, sit around. And so, like, I've been reteaching myself some of these skills that you're learning, recording for other people. And I've been reteaching myself. I've been recording little 1 minute, 1.5 minute blank instrumental tracks and just figuring it all out. I think I'm going to throw some up on a sync licensing site at some point and be like, here, use these if you want to. Pay me whatever, 99 cents or whatever it is they're charging for this kind of stuff. I don't care. I'm recording it just to get out there and start recording and be confident playing parts for people so that I can do that as well. Diversify. Of course, everyone's a guitar player. Not everyone is a fiddle player. So.
And thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
I say.
So that does lead me to a question. We're actually we're running up on we've been talking for over 50 minutes already, and I haven't even asked you about gear yet. Now, I know you've listened to the podcast. I got gear heads on this thing. They get mad if I don't talk about gear, and I'm sure there's a bunch of them rolling their eyes right now. Oh, she's going to talk about her violin. No. Y'all don't understand. If you haven't seen Alice play, I've seen you play electric violin through pedals into amps. Like, you're not just a typical show up, put a microphone on the violin and play kind of player.
Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment.
It is.
Because, honestly, the violin doesn't do well that way, I don't think. I don't know.
See, I could see where they probably get a little snooty about it if I'm over generalizing.
Oh, everything in the world of violinists is snooty, except for me, of course. Just kidding. No, I'll tell you a few things about, I'll tell you, like, my basic setup, and then I'll tell you about a few things that I'm excited about, particularly related to violin. So, my basic setup is a pedal board, not a very big one. They don't actually have that many pedals. I've got an MX reverb and a Boss delay pedal and a Digitech whammy. That is definitely I think probably my favorite pedal, and a phaser and a bass wah pedal. And it's funny because when I was trying out pedals several years back, I tried out both the guitar wah and the bass wah. And the bass wah doesn't really work that well on the higher levels, the higher registers and strings of the violin. But man, does it sound good on like the two low strings.
Interesting.
So that's what sold me on the bass wah.
So
and
which bass wah? I'm curious.
So actually, I'm not a huge gearhead.
No, it's
Let
okay.
me just take a look at it.
Because
I need to even remember the brand.
Dunlop makes a bass wah that I used to use actually on bass that it didn't actually have to click forward to activate it. It activated as soon as you moved. And I wondered if that was it.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I have a Crybaby.
Okay. Yeah.
Is a Crybaby that's the one I have.
That sounds right. I actually really liked that wah pedal. I think more wah pedals should be like that, so I don't have to click forward on them to activate them. I should just have to move it, and it starts working. That would be so much easier.
Yeah, I enjoy this one a lot, and it's become my favorite pedal just because when you I try to save it for the best parts of the show because it's just so juicy. And on the violin, with the sustain that the violin has with the bow, I don't know, I just love using that, and it always turns heads too. So I gotta reserve it for the best parts of the Devil solo and Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Oh yeah, no, that's perfect. So it's kind of crazy to me that you mentioned a whammy pedal. Like even a lot of guitar players won't go near a whammy because they're interesting to find a way to use. Like, don't get me wrong. Every Rage Against the Machine fan went out and bought a whammy and tried to be Tom Morello. But like, there's so much more that pedal can do. And sometimes guitar players are like, you know what? That's just too much. But
it can do a lot. In fact, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, and so that makes sense. But then I just had a moment where it's like, they're really hard to use. Like, you can't really use them on chords. You know what I mean? But on violin, I mean, I know you can play partial chords and double stops, but for the most part, you're a single note instrument. That makes a lot of sense to work.
Yeah, one of my first songs that I ever kind of got inspired by a pedal, in fact, probably the only one right now that I can think of that I wrote, it's called Boots and Cats. It's on my album, Violin Trio, which can be bought everywhere. Don't go to Spotify, buy it on my website. I'm just kidding. But it's called Boots and Cats, and it's just like a B minor 7 and a G minor 7. And I was playing open double stops on the violin. So D and A and G and D. And each of those notes got a minor third added to it, above it. So it became those two chords. And then there's some other chords too. So just so people know, I don't just write 2-chord songs, although maybe if you listen to Ghost in the Water, they would think that. But that was like a song directly inspired by the Digitech whammy. And yeah, also the pitch bending is really fun. I like to do that. Well, kind of got me into that. But yeah, it's a great pedal. And I go out through just like a regular Fishman amp. I also have a Fender Acoustasonic that I enjoy playing with some of my bigger gigs because it has more the 90 watt, and the Fender, the other one is 60. But yeah, that's my like basic setup. And the two things, I'll tell you the two things I'm most excited about. The first piece of gear I really love that I have is a microphone system for the violin made by Your Heaven. And Your Heaven is a tiny little company. I don't know if they're as tiny now as they are when I met them, but I met them at a Folk Alliance conference, and they had a little booth set up. And they have a microphone that goes into the violin through the F hole. So this would be for acoustic violins, not electric like I play on, some Blackwater Trio shows or all of them. But this is like specifically engineered for string instruments. So also guitar, they make a system for guitar as well. And what's really cool, I use this for all of my home recording gigs because there's a way that you can set it up to EQ to each specific instrument that you have. And like now I'm fortunate I don't just have one fiddle, but I have like 2 or 3. And it's really cool because I can make like a profile for each one. And I don't know how the technology works, but it just basically custom EQs it. And every time I play, like this is a system that travels really nicely. It has a little box, and I've taken it and played it in some really like sensitive singer-songwriter shows. And every time I do, like the sound person can never believe how good it sounds. They're like, "Oh my gosh, they told me I had to work with a violinist tonight," and like I'm always dreading that because violinists are always so hard to get sounding like properly on a sound system. But like that sounds so good, and that's like one of my big home recording hacks, and I love it. And what's cool is that I know like one of the people who actually invented it.
Yeah.
And I see him. His name is Stephen Schwartz, and I see him a lot at different Folk Alliance events. And he's such a helpful guy, and he helps me kind of understand how to configure it for the first time. He like walks me through on an hour on my computer, like getting it all perfectly set up for me, like from afar when I first got it. He's so helpful, and he's like also one of the people who designed the entire system. So he just knows it really well. So anyway, I'm not selling that. I don't get any commission from it, but it's called Your Heaven, and it's a really cool system for anybody who plays a string instrument, including guitar. So check it out.
Yeah, no,
and then
I looked it up while you've been talking about it, and it looks really, really fascinating. I'll have to put a link. I'll put a link down in the details so other people can look it up and see what this system looks like.
Yeah, it's there are definitely a couple of things that I would like to see made in the future for this. For example, there's no wireless capability right now, and you know me, like you've seen me around. I would like to be freed from my tether of the cord, but for now, I mostly play it at sensitive singer-songwriter shows anyway, so I don't need to be romping around the stage with it. But
right.
That would be cool. But anyway, it's really just great, especially if you're like me and you're still kind of a novice at everything, computer-wise and sound-wise, and you just want something to like make your instrument sound good going straight into the computer. Or, at a church, or because I know you do that a lot.
Yeah, or did, yourself. Before COVID shut all that down.
Yeah. Right. Same here.
No,
the second cool thing.
I think this would be awesome
go
for home record. So, guitarist. I'm looking at the guitarist system. Guitarist, it's not cheap. Be aware. I'm just going to put the link down there. You can check it out. But I think it would be incredibly helpful for guitarists who have an acoustic guitar they love the sound of, but a piezo pickup or piezo pickup, however you want to pronounce it. Everybody argues over it, but doesn't sound that great plugged into your PA, but you don't have a great microphone you like, and you can't really get, you can't get the sound you want, or maybe your room doesn't sound as good as you'd like. This looks like the perfect system for home studio guys to get a legitimate, great sounding acoustic sound without having to worry about, some crazy expensive microphone or mic position or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, another nice thing about it is it's really good at blocking out anything that's not your instrument. And because it goes inside the instrument, it just has that much more of an advantage. But, I just got Brandon a typewriter for his birthday last year. and he likes to type just at the right time when I'm like doing creative stuff in here. So he could be typing on his typewriter, and I could be recording for somebody, and never the twain shall meet.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and in live situations, it really cuts down on feedback as well. So,
which is always a big deal with any kind of pickup in an acoustic instrument.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Okay, I want to share with you my other thing.
Sure.
We can talk more about your heaven. Also, is that not a provocative name?
Yeah.
I just have to say.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Whenever I'm like, oh, I use your heaven. Like, what?
And you talked about this earlier. Like, as a musician, you've got to have a little bit of bravado and a little bit of ego. That's a company that gets it. They're like, no, we're your heaven. It's like, I love the audacity.
Ecstasy,
I love it.
Yeah. But, like, they really are great. So, and I can't say enough good things about Steve. He's a wonderful guy. He will take care of anybody who needs his help. And they are kind of like a scrappy little startup, too. They're not like Fishman, pickups or something. It's a startup that I think deserves, if you're going to spend hundreds of dollars, because it is not, like you said, it's not cheap, but if you're going to spend the money to like really get something nice. And then actually what I like to do when I am not just in my home is like mix this with, in the studio when we made Violin Trio, the engineer, Mike Wilson, he put microphones inside of a piano. He put them all around the room at Ardent. Like, he did all sorts of things. But the mic that I had from the Your Heaven system, my heaven, it gave like this really great body and spacey register to the violin mix that, it didn't really pick up the room, of course, but we had other mics for that. But he just gave like a great starting point on which he could layer everything else. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome.
That's all. I think I've said everything that I can think of as good. There's a lot of good things about your heaven.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I'll share that link in the description so folks can check it out. Maybe I'll find them. I don't know if they're on Instagram or anything. I'll find their Instagram if they've got one. But
yeah, show them some love.
Very cool. So
the
that's
last thing I'll say, gear-wise, that's everything in my rig right now. Besides my Purple Dragon violin, which I love, it's Vibridge violin, and I feel like people now, know me by that violin. They're like, "Ooh, who's the girl with the purple violin?" So, anyway, it's fun. But just a little side note, and this is probably not gear related as much, but I just got one of my carbon fiber bows rehaired, and guess what color I got in the hair?
I'm assuming purple, I hope.
Oh, gosh. Well, they do make purple, but think a little bit more under the radar.
Ah, you're going to have to tell me.
Well, it's not that exciting, but it's black. And it's a black carbon fiber bow. So, real fun. And I'm excited to, debut that. And anyway, I put it out there on my most recent Fiddler's Friday live stream. But that's something that I think I'm going to start doing more of. And I think it's becoming a trend. So my coworker at AMRO, did this for me mostly as an experiment for both of us. But he said that it's also becoming sort of a trend for, string players to get black horsehair on their bows. And not just the typical white. You can, of course, get all the, tutti frutti colors of the rainbow if you would like to get pink or neon green or whatever. But yeah, anyway, that's something that I'm just excited about aesthetically. But also, the black horsehair is not quite as processed as white horsehair, and it's thicker and just so robust. And I feel like it brings out a lot more of the upper and lower tones, whereas my regular bow, which is also great. Like regular horsehair, of course, has been used for centuries, but that's more of like brings out the mids. But this this other hair that I have now on the black bow, it just like shines in a different way. And so I am excited to bring it to gig and hoping also that like because it's a little bit more grippy on the string, that it won't like I won't wake up the next morning and have like shoulder pain, which I sometimes do.
So we were talking earlier about the snootiness of violin culture. Is there like so?
Oh yeah.
There are carbon fiber guitars out there, and guitarists turn their lowbrow noses up at carbon fiber guitars. Is there anything like that in violin culture where they see carbon fiber bows or even carbon fiber violins and they just kind of go, "Oh no, just can't do that."
Oh, I mean, yeah, I used to be one of those people, and now look at me. I mean, you're talking to somebody, yeah, and of course, like that, everything got turned upside down when I came down to the South. Like I play more now on a purple violin than I do on the regular one.
Yeah, playing a purple electric violin with a carbon fiber bow. I mean, your old classical friends won't even know who you are.
No, I don't think anybody like south of the Mason-Dixon line ever expected this of me, and people south of the Mason-Dixon line probably didn't expect this of me to take this turn in my life, where I put away the classical music and started running around the stage, jumping up and down, just like turning into an alter ego of myself. But anyway, yeah, like I think there's a lot of stuff out there, especially because let's face it, like Pernambuco wooden bows are really expensive, and I don't think I did use that for a long time before I got my first carbon fiber bow. But if you're swinging it around, playing some, not to talk forever about Devil and Down to Georgia, but that's just the one I could think of where I like top little bow choreography that I've sort of built into the song for myself. So I don't want to do that with my nice wooden bow. So I feel like maybe it's also my love and affection for like the old-fashioned style, like the real deal wooden violins and bows, that makes me want to play a carbon fiber violin, carbon fiber bow, because that was really the reason I got my Purple Dragon to begin with. Was I was at Stone Pony and watching people walk by me with like, overflowing beers in their hands. And I think at one point at a trio show, Tess like walked right into me and spilled Diet Coke all over my purple violin. And like I laughed at the time, but like painfully laughed. But it would not have been nearly as funny if it were my wooden violin. So
yeah, no, I can totally. I think the same thing about I have a old vintage Super Reverb that I love, but it's like I take it on nights I was hosting jams or whatnot, and somebody comes on stage and they put their beer on top of my amp, and I'm like, I will kill you. I will murder you on stage. Remove the beer from the amp that's twice my age. Please, not quite that, but
if anybody's going to ruin my amp, it's going to be me.
Exactly. It's that way I feel about my guitars. It's like, look, if I ding my guitars up, that's on me, and that's me doing it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. It's I don't know. It's a wild way of looking at it. So we have talked a long time, but I meant to ask you this earlier. So I remember my first experience with violin, not in classical, bluegrass, or country. I went and saw the band Blue October at the New Daisy Theater in Memphis. May it rest in peace. And I don't know if you're familiar with the band at all, but they have an electric violinist as well. And that was the day that I was like, oh, violin can do other things. It doesn't have to be in this, very prim and proper, or even bluegrass isn't prim and proper, but you get the idea. It's very in its box. It can go way outside and do all these very, very cool things. And so to see you as you've started to embrace, that's really, really cool to see some of the sounds you're pulling off, some of the things you're doing. It makes it interesting because it's not something you hear very often at all.
Oh, I agree. I think it's most interesting to dwell in the places that are neither here nor there for violin. And thank you for the compliment on that, because that's definitely what I'm, like, my aim, I tell people, is to push the violin, like, further outside of its normal comfort zone. So, like you said, the usual ones, any kind of fiddle genre that, like, you could find a book for that genre on how to teach you to play, or classical.
Right.
But yeah, and like jazz violin, I love that. But even that has some kind of boxes around it. Like hot club jazz, for example, has a very like defined way to play. But I remember when I was like hanging out with John Mohead and played some shows with him, he told me, like, there's a lot of ways in which you play and like you're inside a box, but what's best, like what I like most about your playing, Alice, is when you like break the boundaries of that box and just kind of fly away. And that's like when I think about my solo project, so Violin Trio, and then right now I have 3 singles out as well, Queen and Wonderful Fall and Ghosts in the Water, which is my heavily Mississippi inspired song, Moon Lake, actually.
Oh, nice.
Those, yeah, like for me, all of that is the expression of me trying to find new places for the violin to be. And, it's like there's still a lot of uncharted territory out there for the violin. And I think it's cool to make it sound like instruments that it's not and put it into context where it doesn't usually belong. So, yeah, I'm all about that.
That is so cool, and it's such an interesting thing just to hear a violin do something different. And my suggestion as we wrap up is going to be that everyone who listens to this podcast, all 10s of you, all the family, y'all, we're getting the word out there slowly but surely. Y'all go check out Alice Hasen's record, Violin Trio. You've also got some new stuff you're working on. I'm sure you're working on a new album already, just like most good artists are. I'm going to put a link down for your Spotify, but you know what? Y'all don't go get that. Y'all know my stance on this. I've said it on every podcast at this point. Streaming doesn't pay shit, so I'm going to put a link to your website where they can go buy your music and get it directly from you. Alice is on Instagram. I'm going to put links to all your socials so they can find where you are. Hopefully there will be gigs and people can catch you live again soon. Until then, you're still doing the Friday live streams?
Yeah, I am, and I've really been enjoying that. The most recent one was songs from film with swagger. So we did, yeah, I know, right? We did, I did the Ecstasy of Gold on the lute pedal, and I didn't talk about my lute pedal. That'll have to be another day, I guess.
Yes.
And then I did some Pirates of the Caribbean, and then I roped Brandon into playing Promontory from The Last of the Mohicans with me, and so that was fun because he plays guitar, but he won't tell the world that, so I tell the world. And I get to have like a live-in guitar player and AV person and film director and everything. So anyway, he's great. But yeah, that's every Friday at 4 p.m. And I'm sure you put the links and stuff in there, but my Facebook page is Alice Hasen Music, and I also stream it to the Blackwater Trio page. And I've recently started also streaming them to YouTube, which is just my name. So
awesome.
Easy to find, hopefully, for everyone. Yeah, it's a blast. I really enjoy when people, obviously, like, you can tell how many people are tuning in, but when people say hello and I can say hello back. That's like a small window into the outside world. So,
No,
so
it's
y'all
fantastic.
please say hi if you watch Fiddler's Friday.
Well, that's awesome. So all those links are going to be down in the description below. Also, down in the description below, there's going to be links for this podcast on Instagram, on Facebook. Make sure if you enjoy the podcast, and I really hope you do, make sure you leave a review and leave a rating. It helps us find new listeners. I keep using the royal plural, us, it's me. It helps me find new listeners. And I have started a Patreon for this podcast. Y'all, I don't make my living doing this, and I don't have aspirations to do that. I just really enjoy doing this. So the Patreon is designed to help cover things like hosting costs, better equipment, better software, if I can find a way where, get away from phone interviews, or maybe travel expenses to actually go interview people in person, which would be fantastic, to actually sit across from another human being and not stare at my computer screen. That would be awesome. So it's going to cover those things, but also, because I don't do this for a living, 25% of everything that I take in after Patreon fees on Patreon is going to go to charity. So it'll be donated to charities like the Delta Blues Museum. It'll be donated to charities like St. Jude Children's Hospital and other extremely worthwhile charities like that, because I feel like it's really important to support those that need it the most. I'm lucky enough to still have a full-time job that has lasted through a pandemic, and I want to be able to put some money where it really needs to go. So I really appreciate everyone listening. Remember that you can email us at 40wattpodcast@gmail.com. You can also call and leave a voicemail. I got my first voicemail this past week, and it was a wrong number. But it was a school district looking for the parents of some children. I really hope they found those parents, but I'm not that person. So leave a voicemail. Maybe I'll read it on the podcast, and maybe it'll be a discussion topic for me and my guest that week. But you can call us at 662-546-0615. Again, we're on Facebook, Instagram. You can find us all there. Alice, I really appreciate you hanging out, talking. It's actually my longest episode so far, I think, and didn't talk about guitar. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh, man, what notoriety. I have been honored to be on this podcast with you, Phillip. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
Oh, yeah, and I'm so happy. Hopefully we'll get to do this again. We'll get you back on, hopefully in person one day, because I have so many Memphis area musicians I'd love to be able to get on the podcast. Maybe I can make a weekend out of coming to Memphis and just getting as many people on the podcast as I possibly can in a weekend. You can stay with us when you do. Oh, well, I appreciate it. I really do. So we're going to make that happen soon. Until then, though, folks,
awesome.
y'all remember, please be good to yourselves. Please be good to each other, and try and make a little bit of noise. Y'all take it easy. This episode is brought to you by the supporters of 40 Watt Podcast over on Patreon. Go over to patreon.com/40watt podcast, where for as little as $3 per month, you can help support the podcast and get every episode ad-free. For $5 a month, you'll get every episode ad-free, as well as a bonus episode every week. I can't overstate how thankful I am for the support of my patrons, and hope you'll consider joining the team and helping keep this show on the road.